Yo, what is going on, guys? It is Will back with another YouTube video. Uh, Today's Christmas Eve, so happy Christmas Eves, and tomorrow's Christmas, so Merry Christmas if you do celebrate it. Happy holidays, right? Tomorrow I will not be uploading. I'll be pretty busy. My brother just got back home from the Marines, so he's here for a couple days, so I'm gonna spend some time with him. But obviously, we still gotta work and keep up with what we're doing here. So I wanted to give you guys some really, really good information. This is probably, in my opinion, one of the most important things in the financial industry, in the stock market in general, is something called ETFs. Now, what an ETF is, right? ETF is like a fund. It's multiple companies stacked up into one, quote-unquote, you can call it a stock, right? But it's just multiple companies stuffed into one big fund that you can purchase. So instead of having all your eggs in one basket, for example, let's say you purchase 100 shares of Apple, you can purchase 100 shares of an ETF, and if Apple goes bankrupt, your ETF will still be fine. It might pull back a little bit, but if you have 100 shares in Apple, it's going to go to zero. So ETFs are definitely good for balancing out your portfolio, right? Because you want to have a proper risk when you are investing. If you're older, ETFs are definitely the way to go. Even when you're younger, I think ETFs are still great because they do beat the S&P 500, and most people do not invest. And you're just beating everybody in your generation if you're investing at a young age. So let's talk about it. So most people know the biggest one, which is SPY, right? That's the S&P 500. Everybody knows what that is. You got the Dow Jones, you got NASDAQ. Those are the big ones. I think the S&P 500 is great, right? If you just don't care about stocks and you just want to retire wealthy, invest in the S&P 500 every month, you'll retire pretty wealthy. But me, as an equity trader, my goal is to beat the S&P 500 every single year. That's something that most equity traders do. They want to benchmark themselves to an ETF, and most of them do choose the S&P 500 because it's the oldest, it's historic, it's returned about 12% a year. So that's what everybody benchmarks them. Usually most people benchmark themselves against the S&P 500, and I do myself. So for example, the 52-week change on the S&P 500 right now is 26.68%. The S&P has had a very, very great year. What did my portfolio return this year? Well, my portfolio returned this year about 39%. So I'm beating the S&P 500. It's great. I've beaten it every year for about 6 years now. So that's the goal. But let's dig into a little bit about ETFs, because these are like the main ones. But I want to talk about the U.S. industries ETFs, because these are very important, because you can beat the S&P 500. You can beat the S&P 500 with these sectors if they do outperform the S&P 500. So these ETFs have 500 companies in it, but they're heavily weighted. So for example, if we take, right, I'm just going to use the first one, XLF, for example. That's the financial sector. So now what's that going to be consisted of, right? It's going to be mostly consisted of banks. Bank of America, JP Morgan, all these big banks. That's the financial sector. And it's going to have the top 500 companies in there. It's like the S&P 500, but the S&P 500 doesn't have specific sectors. It's just the top 500 companies in the U.S. market. So this is the top 500 companies in the financial sector. But now keep in mind, it is heavily weighted into more stocks. So for example, if we take a look at the tech sector, right, the XLK, the tech sector, it's probably about 13 to 14% invested in Apple, 13% in Microsoft, 13% in Nvidia. That's very normal. When you do start pushing into ETFs, you will get more heavily weighted. But guess what? That does give you a better return than the S&P 500, which is why it's great to be looking into these things right here. I might have said Apple for technology sector. It's not in the technology sector. It's in the communication sector. My bad. It's a lot of information in this. So we're going to touch on each one and where I think if you do want to get into ETFs, where I think you should put your money, not financial advice, and where I just wouldn't touch it all, in my opinion. So first we're just going to go down the list here. So first we're going to start off with XLF. So this is the financial sector. Sorry, we're going to get a lot of ads here. But this website is great, barchart.com. It gives you a lot of information. I think it's a great website, a lot of good news on here. So if you don't have a website for getting free information, I think Barchart is great for that. All right, so let's talk about it a little bit. Give me 1 second, I'm drinking my coffee. So, one thing that we do notice, right, about this, about the financial sector right here, is that it has returned, that it has returned a 31% week change, 52-week change. So over the 1 year, it's returned 31%. What has the S&P returned? 26%. So it is beating the S&P 500. So if you invested in this, you're beating the S&P 500, which is something you want to do. So I do think this one is good. I'm going to rank this one in the top 3. So I'm going to have a ranking list. I will put it up at the end of the video. Or I'll just put it in the description of where I think each ETF falls, in my personal opinion. This one's definitely going to be in the top 3 for me. Why? Because banks control the world. Banks are not going out of business. If banks go out of business, we're going to have some serious problems. Okay, next. Oh, and also keep in mind, some of these ETFs will pay out dividends. So as you can see, a 1.42% dividend yield annually. So, that divide that by 12, that's, maybe 0.15% or something like that. But the reason why the dividend's so low is because it's more of a growth, right? Long-term growth. That's the purpose. So when you start digging into dividends and into ETFs, you'll notice that growth will not be as much, but dividends will pay more for you to hold it. So XLF is definitely going to be a top 3 here. The next sector we're going to go into is the energy sector, and I'm going to rank this one at the bottom. Reason being I'm ranking this one at the bottom, I think it was a good purchase in 2020, but then yet again, everything was a good purchase in 2020, right? If you bought any type of stocks or anything in 2020 and the company didn't go bankrupt, you made money. Reason being, for the energy sector is they do offer a higher dividend yield. So that means there's less growth when it comes to this. I wish I can see the stocks that are actually tied up in this. It's probably somewhere here. And I would like to take a look at the stocks, but what we'll do is we'll just do it like this. We'll just do it like this here. We'll go on Yahoo Finance. I know they show the stocks here. That's in it. Okay, so, right, we're talking about XLE. So this is actually great right here. So it actually gives a full breakdown of, let's actually take a look back at, what was the last one that we looked at? XLF, was it? Yeah, XLF. Okay, let's take a look at XLF real quick, just so we can see the stocks in this. This is great, much better. Okay, so yeah, Berkshire, JP Morgan, Visa, MasterCard, Bank of America. Like I said, right, it's heavily based in the financial services sector. Reason being, you're getting a lot of growth out of these, right? A lot of these stocks grow consistently throughout the year. Now, when you start touching something like XLE, the energy sector, there's not too much growth when it comes to these stocks right here. Exxon, Chevron, these are just big name companies. You know these companies, but do you know how good they grow? I mean, from 5 years, $40 to $106. I mean, a 51% gain. I mean, I guess that's okay. 2 months, Tesla's returned over 180%. So, I mean, I think there's better areas to invest your money. I think right, this is where times are starting to change, right? We went through the whole energy revolution already, right? I think we're going through this tech revolution. We went through the tech revolution. Now we're going through this AI/tech revolution. So that's why I think we should be based very heavily in the technology and AI sector. As you can see, right, from 1990, right, $11, to 2010, right, 66. That's really good. That's really good. You 6x your money. You 6x your money in about 10 years. I think that's very, very good. But now, we can see it's starting to get stagnant over here, and then we had the COVID sell-off, But I think, it's going to be very stagnant. I don't think we're going to see, crazy growth when it comes to these stocks here. So this is probably going to be at the bottom of my list here. And then next we're going to head over to... The only problem is if you don't have the membership with these guys, you just get spam with ads, which is kind of annoying. XLI, which is the industry sector. Okay. So year to date, $100 to $133. It's returned. Okay, so it's returned 18%. It's done worse than the S&P 500. Okay, so I don't think this is a bad sector, right? But in my personal opinion, I just wouldn't. I would invest in certain stocks in this sector, right? Like for example, I think Boeing is so oversold right now, and it's one of the biggest manufacturers out there for aircraft. So there are certain stocks that I would pick out of this, but as an ETF, me personally, I would stay away from this. Yeah, I mean that's kind of basically it with XL. I mean there's certain stocks like I'd pick out, like Boeing I'd pick out, but I'm not really a fan of anything else in here. I mean, yeah, that's about it for XLI. We're going to head down to XLB, which is the materials sector. Alright, so XLB, this year, I mean, you could just tell it's returned 1.25%. Would I invest in this? Definitely not. This, if not, might be one of the worst ones. Even the, yeah, this is very, just not a good ETF. Back then it probably was a very good ETF. No, I mean barely. It took you, so from 2000, right? Let's just say we invested at year 2000, right? We got it at $20. 2020, right? It turned to 60. So it took you 20 years to 3x your money. That's not good. Terrible. Very bad. Reason being, I mean, they're very heavily weighted into this company. I'm not sure. So this company is listed in the Dow Jones. But, like, look how well this stock has performed, right? This stock has performed very well. Maybe not on the year. The 5 years, all right. But it's very, very well performed stock. This is more like a generational holding type of stock where you buy it, and then you sell it later on or you give it to your kids. But this stock has performed very well, and it's probably carried this industry in my opinion. Yeah, like look at this stock right here, SHW, 5 years, 77%. All time, it's returned very well. Actually, $2 you could have bought it at back in 1990. I wish I was not fucking around in 98 when I came out the womb. But this is a sector I would stay away from. This is gonna be at the bottom of the list as well too. Yeah, no doubt about it. Dividend yield 1.9%. You could get better in the healthcare, in my opinion. Next. what was that, XLB, right? Yeah, XLB. XLP is the con staple sector. So over the year, it's returned 12%, beyond awful. Okay, so like, okay, so for example, like this ETF, right? I think it has some good stocks in here. These are going to be like your, like your Target, your Walmart, Costco, all these different companies that provide consumer transactions. I do like for example, Costco. I think it's a great stock to invest in. Just over the year, it's what's it returned? Can it show me? Just over the year, it's returned 46%. Oh, it's right here, 42%. I think Costco's a very great stock. They're probably plan to split pretty soon here. I would assume so. But so like, see, this is why it's important to know where some of these ETFs are invested in. Because you can pick out certain stocks in these sectors and easily outperform the S&P 500. Like if you bought Costco a year ago and you bought S&P a year ago, one almost doubled your return versus the S&P 500, which quartered your return. So that's why it's important to learn with these ETFs. But me personally, no, I would not invest in this. It would probably be a mid, because they do offer a 2.76%. So at least it's better than the other one that we saw, which was the material sector, right? It returned like, what, 1%, and it offered 1% dividend. So that's just beyond terrible, right? In my opinion. If you think it's good, then go ahead and invest in it, right? So next we're going to be talking about is the con disc sector, XLY. So let's take a look at XLY real quick. So over the year, 30%, 29%. It has beat the S&P 500. Now, why has it beat the S&P 500? Well, let's take a look at the holdings here. Amazon at 22%, Tesla at 17%, Home Depot at 7%. These companies all perform very well. I think Nike right now is a great buying opportunity. It still hasn't recovered. I think it's a great buying opportunity. And it's heavily weighted towards Amazon and Tesla. As I see that, something weighted like this, right, into Amazon and Tesla, this is an ETF I would invest in. Top 3, 100%. It beat the S&P 500. So you can't even be mad at it, right? It's done its job. And, I think this is a great sector to be investing in if you're looking for an ETF to dollar cost average into. So definitely top 3 with that one. XLC, this is another big one here. XLC is very, very good. So as you can see, XLC, it's the communication services sector. So you're going to have Meta, Google, Netflix, Disney. Great sector. I think Disney's a great buy as well, too, as an individual stock. And it's returned 36%. Over the year, so it's absolutely smoked the S&P 500. This might be the best returning. Sector as of this year, I believe so. Why do I keep getting lost? Yeah, so it's definitely the best performing sector out of all these. As you can see, XLB and then XLE. Like I said, I'm just not a fan of these sectors, right? I would get out of these sectors if you are in them. So yeah, I think this is definitely going to be up there in the top area to invest in as well too. Why? Because those big names, right? They're all doing AI. They're all doing all this new renovation into this new industry that we're heading into. Next one is going to be XLK, which is the tech sector. So over the year, 25%. I think it fell short by 1%, or it's beating the S&P by 1%. But as you can see, top 3 big names in there. Apple, Nvidia, Microsoft. That's all you need to know, right? Salesforce is great too. Broadcom's great too. I like Adobe as well too. Advanced Micro Devices. It has a very good, a very very good portfolio here. I see this being very very well long term. This might be my number one. This one I think is my number one. I'm gonna have to double check. It's between this XLK and XLC, but I think this is gonna be my number one. And also AMD is at a fire sale right now. If you haven't been buying AMD yet, I think you should start buying AMD. Not financial advice. But yeah, as you can see, the 1 year 24%, great ETF. XLV. This is gonna be your health sector ETF. So over the years, returned 3%. But keep in mind, right? It has returned 3%. They pay a dividend of 1.65%. And as you can see, right? Reason being for, it had a really good. I think it had a really good 3-year return or a 5-year return. No, that's not even that good. But during that COVID time, right? If you bought this fund, you returned very, very well on your percentage gains. Why? UNH was hitting all-time highs. Johnson & Johnson was hitting all-time highs. All these big companies were hitting all-time highs because they were pushing out these COVID vaccines and etc. and stuff like that. But Eli Lilly, for example, right, over the 5 years, it's returned 100% or 500%. Over the year, it's returned 39%. It's doing very well, but the rest of the health sector is falling back. UNH is having a big sell-off. Why? Because the CEO is not present anymore. He's now in a better place, hopefully. So there's a lot of areas where, this is probably going to be at bottom of my list as well, too. I'm just not a fan of the healthcare sector, and even individual stock investing. I don't like to play with the healthcare sector. There's a lot of lawsuits. A lot of places can go out of it. A lot of companies can go out of quick. It's a very risky sector to be a part of, in my personal opinion. I think there's less riskier funds to be in and less riskier stocks to be involved with. Next, we're going to be talking about XLU, which is the utility sector. Year to date, 23.8%. So this is going to be another energy sector, but it's more utility based, right? This is just like actual energy. I'm not too sure what these stocks are. I would have maybe like solar and wind. Okay, so this looks like solar and wind. Versus the other sector was more gas based, right? So this is gonna, okay, yeah, that's what this is. So this is more solar, wind based, cleaner for the world and shit like that. All time high, 3,100, very very good. Like when solar started coming around and all this, we need to clean up the world. Just returned very very well. The 1 year is not too bad. This is probably going to be on my mid list. I don't think it's terrible. And also the dividend's 2.87%. Yeah, 2.9%, 2.8%. So you are getting growth, right? So you're getting right. You got 23% growth, and you also got a 3%, almost a 3% dividend. This is gonna definitely be close to the top of my list as well too. Maybe top 3 actually. This is a very good ETF. I'm actually gonna look into this myself a little bit more and dig into some of these stocks here that they actually that they're actually invested in. This is actually pretty interesting. I have to look into this. Everybody's talking about cleaner world and shit like that. So that's that's never gonna go away, right? Yeah, I think this is a great sector to invest in my opinion. Pretty good. Not bad. That surprised me. Not a fan of the energy sector, but that's actually not bad. And then we're going to talk about the real estate. Save the best for last, right? because I absolutely hate real estate stocks. You know, when you, like, reason why it peaked here, right? Prices were at an all-time high for houses. I mean, prices are going to rise, you know, no matter what. So, I mean, it's going to be a growth up, right? It's going to be a growth up. But the main part, right, your year-to-date's 4.7%. But your yield for dividend, yield for dividend is 3.4%. So you are sacrificing growth, but you're getting dividend returns. Now, there are a lot of these. I'm just reading real quick. Okay, so yeah, it's just real estate, right? I'm just not a fan of real estate investing for stocks. I think for your, you know, if you're going to buy real estate, that's a little different. That's what I would do. I wouldn't invest in a real estate fund. I would just go buy real estate if I really wanted to. But yeah, I mean, so how about we do this? I'm going to go ahead and rank these in order of where I think they fall. So let me grab my notes real quick. Okay. So we're going to start with the worst one, in my opinion. Kind of tough to be which one's the worst one, right? I'm going to have to go with, like, XLB over here for the long term. And then right after XLB, we're going to have to go XLE because I just think there's no growth. I think you're better off going, if you want, like, more dividend, you're better off just going into the healthcare or the real estate sector, in my personal opinion. You know, it's not a matter of which one of these are worse, right? I think all four of these, I think they all fall into the same category here of just being bad. I'm just going to say it straight up, of just being bad. Back then, it was a little different. I feel like you could get away with it, but now we're in a whole new revolution, right, of this AI and this technology, which is why I'm going to have to rank all of these last. XLV, what was the other one? XLB, materials sector, yeah. XLB, XLE, XLRE, that was it, XLRE. XLV for the healthcare sector. Yeah, it's just not, like, I think they're, like, all around the same area of just being bad. Like, I think there's better ETFs to invest in, right? That's my personal opinion. Next, in my personal opinion, this is kind of where I think, you know, we'll start to branch out to where something is better than something else. So number 7, in my personal opinion, I think we're going to have to go with XLP, the staple sector. And then right after that, we're going to go with XLI. So XLP, XLI. And now we're at the top 5 here. So this is where it's going to get a little tricky where I am going to place things. But number 3, I definitely know my number 3. My number 3 is actually going to be XLU. This utility sector. They offer great dividend and, right, the 3%, and they've returned about 21% for the year. And this is something that's just not a niche. We're going to keep hearing it over and over again. We need a cleaner world. It's going to stay here. I would have to do more individual investing on these specific stocks because I do not know any of them. I just know they're solar and wind powered based. So XLU is going to have my number 3 here. My number, this is my number 1 and my number 2. Okay, you know what? I know what we're gonna do. Number 4 is gonna be XLU. Number 4 is gonna be XLU. Just because if you don't have enough, right? If you don't have enough capital yet, I don't think you're ready to get into XLU. You want to have as much growth as possible while you're younger, and then eventually when you get older, you can switch to dividends because then it compounds much, much faster. But I think, and then pay yourself out with dividends. I think XLU is going to have to be my number 4 here. These top 3 are like, okay, you know what? XLF, we're going to go with the banks here as number 3. Because I think tech's going to outgrow. I think tech and the communication sector are both going to outperform. Yeah, I think they're both going to outperform the banks in the long term. Number 5, we're going to go with the 30%. That's going to be XLY here. I think Costco's a great stock. I think Costco's kind of carrying that whole industry right now, in my personal opinion. So I think you know, with that being said, if one stock's carrying the industry, and that stock's not having such a great year, you're not going to return a good percentage on it, right? So that's why XLY is going to be number 5. But I think my number this is so hard, man. Let me take a look at these again. See, Meta's leading this AI, right? But then you have Apple, Nvidia, and Microsoft, which... Nvidia's already grown so much, right? For it to double, it has to double its market cap, which is a lot to ask for. But this is also years in time we're talking about, right? And I do like Salesforce a lot. My number one here will be XLK. And then my number 2 is going to be XLC. But these are very, very close, right? These are very, very close here. This is kind of where I would, like, branch everything out, right? I think, you know, even XLF, I think XLF has its own area of where it's better, in my personal opinion. This is how I would branch it out, just me personally here. What is that? I don't know what that is. This is how I would branch it out. You have your top 2 right here. I think you have your 3, which has it's a little bit better than your 4 and 5 here. 6 and 7 are your decents, right? And then you just have terrible. Just bad. I can't even, like, it's kind of hard to even compare these because you can just see they performed very, very bad, over this year. And I'm just not a fan of it. Real estate. So, like, yeah, real estate's returned 2%. But shit, man, like 2% in 1 year? That is nothing. You're better off investing into a treasury bill at that point and getting like 3-4%, or investing in bonds and getting 4-5%. Or putting in a high yield savings account and you get 4.5%. So, like, you know. But yeah. I mean, that's it. I hope you guys learned something, because this stuff right here will teach you a lot when you start learning about these sectors as well too. But yeah, I mean, that's basically it. Next time, I think I'm gonna be talking about. I think I want to talk a little bit about corporate bonds. I think they're pretty interesting, and I think people kind of overlook them, or just don't really know too much about them to invest in corporate bonds. Or maybe we'll talk about dividend investing versus growth investing. I think that's a really good topic too. We'll have to figure it out. But other than that, I'm gonna head out, guys. I will catch you guys next time. I'll see you guys on the 26th, which is a what? 26th, which is a Thursday. Alright, guys. Take it easy. Later.